Welcome, dear students, to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. K.S. Nagaraja of Deccan College, Pune, teaching the course of Historical Linguistics. Today, we will consider the module on Dravidian languages. Dravidian languages can be considered in a way a family isolate restricted to Indian subcontinent only. But in fact, it can be further restricted to South India with slight extensions to eastern and northern areas. Dravidian languages is a second important language family after Indo-Aryan languages, which we have already considered. It is a mystery how the Dravidian languages emerged, who are the people, from where they came, whether they are the native people of the subcontinent or not. There's a lot of controversy in that area. So in this particular course, studies the languages of this particular family and looks at some of the issues of migration and the type of influences the languages have undergone in due course of time from the earliest to the present time. This family, in a way the world's fourth largest and the second biggest in India, consisting of more than 25 languages and having more than 200 million speakers spread over the South Asian subcontinent. According to Bha Krishnamurti, a famous Dravidian linguist, the languages of this family have been subgrouped into 4 branches. The major languages with population given in the bold. So the 4 branches are South Dravidian, South Central Dravidian, Central Dravidian, and North Dravidian. In the South Dravidian sub-branch includes 3 scheduled or official languages of the Union: Tamil, having more than 60 million speakers, Malayalam 33 million, and Kannada 37 million. Besides these 3, many non-scheduled languages like Toda, Kota, Kodagu, Irula, Badaga, and Tulu. Tulu also has a sizable number of speakers, 1.72 million. Also Kuruba, Yarava, Yarukula, Katkadi, Korava, Koraga, Bellari, Burgundi are included in this group. In the second one, that is South Central group, besides the scheduled language Telugu, having a population of more than 74 million, other non-scheduled languages like Savara, Gondi also has a sizable population, 2.7 million, Konda, Pengo, Manda, Kuvi, probably also Indi and Ave, supposed to be recent discoveries. In the third group, Central Dravidian includes only non-scheduled languages like Kolami, Naiki, Parji, Vallari, Gadaba. And in the fourth one, that is the North Dravidian languages, includes non-scheduled languages Malto, Kudukh. Kudukh also has a sizable population, 1.75 million, and Brahui. Except for the 4 scheduled languages, which are literary as well as official languages of the respective states, also all others are non-literary languages, and most of those communities have smaller population and they live in forested areas. Though these languages are mainly concentrated in South India, There are many tribal communities in Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Orissa, Jharkhand, Bihar, West Bengal, and outside India as well, in southern Nepal, where Kuduk is spoken, Sri Lanka, Tamil is spoken, even in Maldives, Tamilians are found, and Brahui is spoken in Pakistan. In later days, some Dravidian languages, particularly Tamil, has entered into Burma, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Fiji, Madagascar, Mauritius, Guyana, and Trinidad as well. So the four literary languages like Tamil, the official state language of Tamil Nadu, has a long history recorded in epigraphy and native literatures. Tamil dates from the 2nd century BC, Kannada, official language of Karnataka, from the 4th century AD, Telugu, official language of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, from the 7th century AD, and Malayalam, official language of Kerala, from the 10th century AD. Interestingly, nothing definite is known about the origin of this particular family. There are vague indigenous traditions about a migration from the south from a submerged continent in the Indian Ocean. According to some scholars, Dravidian languages are indigenous to India. In recent years, a hypothesis has been gaining ground about a movement of these speakers from the northwest to the south and east of the Indian peninsula, possibly from as far as away as Central Asia. Another theory connects these speakers with the people of the Indus Valley civilization. The Dravidian languages have remained an isolated family until now and have defied all of the attempts to show a connection with the Indo-European, Mitanni, Basque, Sumerian, Korean, Japanese, etc. The most promising and probably plausible hypothesis is that of a linguistic relationship with the Uralic, means Hungarian, Finnish, and Altaic, that is Turkish and Mongol language groups. As an independent family, the Dravidian languages were first recognized in 1816 by Francis W. Ellis, a British civil servant. The actual term Dravidian was first employed by Robert Caldwell, who introduced the Sanskrit word Dravida, which in a 7th century text obviously meant Tamil, into his epoch-making a comparative grammar of the Dravidian or South Indian family of languages, published in 1856, a historical survey of Dravidian languages. Although in modern times Dravidian has occupied the southern portion of India, while the Indo-Aryan tongues have predominantly found in North India, nothing definite is known about the ancient domain of the Dravidian parent speech. It is, however, a well-established hypothesis that Dravidian speakers must have been widespread throughout India, including the northwest region. This is clear because a number of features of the Dravidian languages appear in the Rig Veda, the earliest known Indo-Aryan literary work, thus showing that the Dravidian languages must have been present in the area of the Indo-Aryan ones. The Indo-Aryan languages were not, however, originally native to India. They were introduced by Aryan invaders from the north. Several scholars have demonstrated that pre-Indo-Aryan and pre-Dravidian bilingualism in India provided conditions for the far-reaching influence of Dravidian on the Indo-Aryan tongues in the spheres of phonology, for example, retroflex consonants, syntax, for example, the frequent use of gerunds, which are non-finite verb forms of nominal character, as in by the falling of the rain, and vocabulary. A number of Dravidian vocabulary apparently appear in the Rig Veda itself. Thus, a form of Proto-Dravidian or perhaps a Proto-North Dravidian must have been extensive in North India before the advent of the Aryans. Apart from some islands of Dravidian speech, however, the process of replacement of Dravidian languages by the Aryan languages was entirely completed before the beginning of the Christian era, after a period of bilingualism that must have lasted many centuries. Finally, the almost universal adaptation of Indo-Aryan in the north and Dravidian in the south has covered up the original linguistic diversity of India. The advent of Dravidian speeches in India is shrouded in mystery. There are vague linguistic and cultural ties with the Urals, with the Mediterranean areas, and with Iran. It is possible that the Dravidian-speaking people established themselves in northwest India during the 4th millennium BC. Along with the route, these immigrants may have possibly come into an intimate, prolonged contact with the Ural-Altaic speakers, thus explaining the striking affinities between the Dravidian and Ural-Altaic groups. Between 200 BC to 1500 BC, Dravidian speakers moved constantly from the northwest to the southeast of India, and in about 1500 BC, three distinct dialect groups probably existed: Proto-North Dravidian, Proto-Central Dravidian, and Proto-South Dravidian. The beginnings of the splits in the parent speech are obviously earlier. It is possible that Proto-Brahvi was the first language to split off from Proto-Dravidian, probably during the immigration movement into India sometime in the 4th millennium BC, and that the next subgroup to split off was Proto-Kuduk-Malto sometime in the 3rd millennium BC. During the 1st millennium BC, while Aryanization steadily progressed in North India, the Dravidian-speaking newcomers began to mix with the Negritos and Proto-Australoids in the south. This process of acculturation continued during the period from approximately 1200 to 600 BC. A movement of the Aryans into the south of India began sometime about 1000 BC. Before the 5th century BC, Proto-South Dravidian was probably still one language with two strongly marked dialects. Within Proto-Central Dravidian, a deep two-way division also might have occurred, and North Dravidian must have already been split into the Kuduk-Malto and Brahvi subgroups. By the Christian era, all the branches and sub-branches had probably become distinct and well established, except perhaps Malayalam language. Sometime during the reign of Ashoka, that is 3rd century BC, the two South Dravidian languages, Tamil and Kannada, developed into distinct idioms, and the two cultures emerged as separate entities. A third major Dravidian linguistic and cultural unit, Telugu, appeared in the Andhra country. In the period from 300 to 100 BC, one of the pre-Tamil dialects, probably that of Madurai, gained prestige and became the standard literary language, Shen Tamil, the written form of early Old Tamil, established in poetic texts and in its earliest grammar, Tolkappiyam. At the same time, about 250 BC, the Ashokan Southern Brahmi script was adapted for Tamil and used in short cave inscriptions by Jain monks during several centuries, dating approximately from 2nd century BC to the 5th century AD. Apart from a Dravidian word in the Hebrew text of the Bible, Tukiyam, that is peacocks, that is Tamil Tokai, tail of a peacock, the Dravidian languages enter history in Sanskrit and Greco-Roman texts. The Cheras, a South Indian dynasty, are possibly mentioned in the early Sanskrit text Aitareya Aranyaka. Katyayana, a grammarian of the 4th century BC, mentioned the countries of Pandya, Tamil Pontia. These lands were well known to Kautilya in 4th century BC itself, the author of the earliest treatise on statecraft, and appear in the edicts of the great Buddhist leader Ashoka, 3rd century BC. The term Dravida, mentioned in Kumarila Bhatta's Tantravartika is almost certainly a Sanskritization with an inserted hypercorrect R of the earliest Pali and Prakrit terms Damila, Damilo, Davida, which must have been derived from the Tamil name of the language Tamil. A number of South Indian words, almost all of the geographic and dynastic names occur in such Greco-Roman sources as the Periplus Martis Erythrae, circumnavigation of the Erythraean Sea of about 89 AD, and in the writing of Ptolemy of Naucratis of the 2nd century AD, Gondoloi, probably for Gondi. It is also very possible that Western language terms for rice, compare Italian zenzero, German ingwer, Greek zingberes, or cultural loans from Old Tamil, Arichi and Inchiva respectively. The earliest inscriptions in Kannada may be dated to 450 AD. Kannada literature begins with Nripatunga's Kaviraja Marga of about 850 AD. The oldest Telugu inscription is from 633 AD, and the literature begins with the grammarian Nannaya's 11th century translation of the Sanskrit classic, the Mahabharata. In Malayalam, the earliest writings are from the close of the 9th century, and the first literary text is probably belonged to 12th century AD called Bhasha Kautaliyam. When we look at the characteristic features, we see a tendency towards structural and systematic balance and stability in these languages. So these are highly agglutinative languages. These languages have basically a word order which is known as subject, object, verb. A tendency towards structural and systematic balance and stability is characteristic of the Dravidian group. Nevertheless, there is no doubt about the influence of the other languages of India. Dravidian languages show extensive lexical borrowing, but only a few traits of structural, either phonological or grammatical borrowing from the Indo-Aryan tongues. On the other hand, Indo-Aryan shows rather large-scale structural borrowing from Dravidian, but relatively few loanwords. Dravidian languages are usually characterized as agglutinative type. There are some elements of internal flexion, for example, the alternation of short-long root vowels in derived words. However, as well as regular alternations in vowel and consonant quantities within the root. Relatively low receptivity to change results in a slower rate of change than is found in the Indo-European languages. The degree of phonetic divergence among the Dravidian languages is not very much, hence etymologies are not too difficult to discover. Proto-Dravidian features. The reconstructed Proto-Dravidian has 10 vowels, 5 short, 5 long. It has 16 consonants, including an unusual system of stops contrasting in 6 points of articulation: labial, dental, alveolar, retroflex, palatal, and velar, 4 nasals, 4 resonants, and 2 glides, ya and va. Alveolar, retroflexes, and resonants do not occur word initially. Colville's law describes the allophony of stops. They are voiceless when they occur initially or geminated, but voice when they occur intervocalically or after nasals. Several metrical rules govern the composition of syllables. For example, C1V C2 alternates with C1V C2 C1, as in the two stems of the verb see, kan versus kani, kant. Though bisyllabic roots are occasionally indicated, reconstructed lexical roots are by and large monosyllabic. While any of the 5 vowel qualities may appear in a root, only a, e, and u may appear in a derivative suffix. Dravidian morphology is transparent, agglutinative, and exclusively suffixal. The order of elements in a word is lexical root, derivational suffix, and inflectional suffix. Proto-Dravidian has two parts of speech, noun and verb, both of which appear in simple and compound forms. Nouns inflect for case, person, number, and gender. Proto-Dravidian has 8 cases: accusative, instrumental, associative, dative, genitive, locative, ablative, besides nominative. These 8 are supplemented by postpositions derived from independent nouns or non-finite verbs. Predicate nominals can be inflected to agree with their subjects. For example, in ancient Tamil, chum marked the first person plural in nam, natom, we are countrymen. The very extensive system of compound nouns can be illustrated by the set of diacritic pronouns which contrast in 4 degrees: even, this man, uvan, that man, nearby, avan, that man, yonder, evan, which, or any man. These are compound nouns. For example, avan, that man, yonder, consists of the noun or that and yonder and one, avan, one man. Compound nouns are often translated into English as a sequence of numeral, adjective, and noun, but the internal structure of these Dravidian expressions is that of a compound noun. Proto-Dravidian verbs are those forms that inflect for verbal categories such as tense and mood. There are 2 tenses, past and non-past, and 2 moods, modal and indicative. From a formal point of view, verbs are finite or non-finite. Finite verbs inflect for tense and subject-verb agreement. These inflections are overt or in the imperative and optative covert. Proto-Dravidian has a constraint that limits the number of finite verbs in a sentence to a maximum of 1. That lone verb stands at the extreme end of the sentence and commands all other verbs within. In effect, it brings the sentence to a close. All remaining verbs in the sentence must be non-finite. The non-finite verbs are infinitives, conjunctive, particle, and conditional. Dravidian languages rely on a rich system of compound verbs to extend the somewhat limited set of simple verb forms. Lexical compound verbs supplement the lexicon by providing a complex morphological, morphosyntactic vehicle for combinations of lexical meanings which are not encoded in any single lexeme of the language. Word order: subject, object, verb. Genitive precedes the nouns, they modify. Main verbs precede auxiliaries and complements precede their matrix clauses. We may look at some of the developments in the various Dravidian languages. Compared to the reconstructed system of Proto-Dravidian phonemes, the most striking development in vowels are the gradual elimination of the contrast between A and A, O and O. In Brahui, we see this kind of situation. Among the developments in the various Dravidian languages, one important development to say is metathesis and vowel contraction resulted in initial consonant clusters in Telugu and other Central Dravidian languages. Is a very important development. The loss of vowels in unaccented non-initial syllables in Toda, Kota, some dialects of Kannada and Tamil is and the resulting consonant clusters is another feature. Among the most important consonantal developments are the loss of ch, Proto-Dravidian ch, a typical South Dravidian phenomenon that seems to be still in progress. The retroflex voiced continuant has been preserved only in the old stages of the cultivated languages and partly in modern Tamil and Malayalam. Elsewhere, it merged with d, l, and other sounds. Word stress is predictable, always occurring on the radical syllable and therefore being non-distinctive. In the sentence, however complex, only one finite verb occurs normally at the end. Gerunds or participles, the word order follows certain basic rules with SOV, that is subject, object, verb is the order. After looking at the grammar, we can move on to vocabulary. However, in case of vocabulary, the languages, all the languages, either the literary languages or non-literary, always are at the receiving end of some of the other languages which were considered to be dominant. Sanskrit, as a religious language of this country, has been giving lots of vocabulary into these languages. In fact, it is considered that 80% of vocabulary of Malayalam is supposed to be borrowed, and most of it from Sanskrit. Whereas Telugu supposed to have something up to 70% of vocabulary. In fact, in Telugu, it is not only Sanskrit, of course Sanskrit at the earlier times, but later on from Perso-Arabic sources also Telugu has borrowed. In the third language, Kannada, has a moderate amount of borrowing, almost 50%, mainly from Sanskrit and later some from Perso-Arabic. And of course, in the present era, all languages are borrowed from English. Then the Tamil is supposed to have least amount of borrowing from Sanskrit and also from other languages. In fact, a few decades back, there was a strong movement in Tamil to nativize the vocabulary, to replace Sanskrit-based vocabulary, and so that has, in a way, reduced the borrowing from Sanskrit, but that has not reduced the borrowing from other languages like English. So vocabulary is relatively different from each other, and the vocabulary can be seen to differ from each other because of the local influences. So to that extent, vocabulary is different, but the core is somewhat similar in languages. Because of that, comparative dictionary has been possible. Otherwise, it would not have been possible. Among all the Dravidian languages, Brahui in Pakistan is inevitably the one most influenced by Indo-Aryan and Iranian. In contrast, Toda is probably the one language least influenced by any other idiom. So to summarize then, Dravidian languages is a Indian phenomenon, exclusively Indian phenomenon. In a way, it can be considered as an isolate family. Being it is agglutinative in nature as well as suffixing in nature, the structure is fairly simple, and that allows comparison with other languages. These have been the reason for easy compilation of etymological dictionary of the languages. Because of the same reason, languages have been studied fairly well, and most of the languages have been described, dictionaries have been compiled. So some scholars have tried to relate Dravidian languages with other languages like Sumerian, Elamites, Mongolian, and various attempts are there. So far, no one has proved to be conclusive. There are lots of literature available, both in the internet and in the published ones. One can read them to gain more knowledge about the various attempts into this, and also about the latest developments in these languages. Thank you.